Welcome back to The Great Detour. I've got a special one for you today. This conversation is all about the quiet, powerful process of coming home to yourself. I'm joined by Colleen Avis, integrative life coach, mindfulness mentor, and author of the Sacred Spaces, Subtle Shifts for Mind, Body, and Home Transformation series. From the moment we connected, I had a feeling this would be one of those conversations that just flows, and it definitely did. In this episode, Colleen shares her story with such vulnerability. We explore what it looks like to unravel old narratives, meet ourselves with compassion, and create space for the kind of transformation that doesn't shout, it whispers. We talk about identity, self-abandonment, subtle shifts, and how healing often begins with one brave question. Who am I? Really? This one's for anybody navigating a turning point, craving more alignment in their life, or simply learning to trust their own inner knowing. And if this episode resonates with you and you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, or share it with a friend. It really does help the show grow and have an even greater impact. And with that, let's get to my conversation with Colleen. Welcome to The Great Detour. I'm Jess, your host. In this podcast, we talk about life's unplanned paths, those experiences that challenge and transform us in ways we never expected. Through honest conversations, my guests and I share inspiring stories and practical advice to help you navigate your own journey. I hope these stories inspire you to trust your path, embrace change with resilience, and step into your most authentic, empowered self. Colleen Avis, welcome to The Great Detour.
Thank you for having me. I feel like it's been a great detour to actually find my way here with you.
I'm so excited. I was just saying to somebody that I feel like this is going to be a conversation with an old friend. Even though we've only known each other for a few months, it's really funny.
Is that true? Yeah, I guess you're right. It has only been a few months.
Yeah, because we met through Jake Bushman, who's on episode 12. He tells his story and his detour that led him to podcasting. And he's also one of the authors in your book, Sacred Spaces. So Jake was saying to me, oh my gosh, you have to meet Colleen. I think you guys will really hit it off. So shout out to Jake for kind of bringing us together.
Always a shout out to Jake, always.
And I love our first communication. You hit me with a voice memo. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's my people. Because if anybody knows me, they know I love voice memos. My friends have just accepted their fate. If you're friends with me, you're getting long voice memos from me. So when you sent that, I was like, oh my gosh, she's my people.
Oh, I was glad you received it because sometimes you send that to people and they're like texting back with, physical text. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I really want to hear your voice. Like, I want to connect with you energetically. And it's so much harder, I think, when it's in like a written word. It's like we don't pick up the phone anymore and call people. And I'm like, oh, please pick up the phone and call me.
I know it's like a lost art form kind of. It's just speaking on the phone. I feel like we're so used to texting. So I completely agree with you there. But Colleen, I really love your energy. I love everything you're about. You're so much about connecting with people and curiosity and really cultivating a life that is truly and deeply authentic to you, and then helping other people do the same thing. So I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, and I feel like you and I click so well, and we can probably go on for hours about all the things. But what I really landed on was the concept of coming home to yourself. And I think that's something that you have done so well, and that your life's work is really helping other people do the same thing with your life coaching, but also with your book, Sacred Spaces, as well as making these small, intentional changes for us to come home to ourselves and live the most expansive, joy-filled, aligned lives that we possibly can. So I'd love to start there. And I think, looking at how we come home to ourselves, we really have to go back to the beginning and go back to childhood. So I would love to start by talking about your childhood a little bit. In volume 1, you told your story and kind of some formative years that you experienced and some pivotal things that happened during those years. And so I would love for you to take us back and kind of talk about that a little bit and how it shaped you and impacted your journey through life.
Ooh, transformation, I feel like it's something we have to really invite, not force. And we come into this world so perfectly divine, so perfectly in balance, so perfectly not needing really anything. I do believe our soul finds itself here to go through some forms of transformation. Ones our soul chooses, right? I actually believe we choose our parents. And so and our experiences. And so what you get, you've kind of asked for.
I believe that too.
But in this human body, it's like, did I really ask for that? I'm not really sure I would have asked for that. Like, can I go back and kind of redefine and talk to my soul about that before I land? But yeah, I think transformation really is about something that we invite and can't force. And to meet you in your question about where my childhood started, it was pretty normal to begin with. I had a mom and I had a dad, and I played soccer. I wasn't very good. Apparently, my mom likes to tell me I bounced around like a little bunny rabbit on the, at 5 or 6 years old. I was a Girl Scout. My mom was a troop leader. Like, we did all these things, right? And things were pretty normal until one day they weren't. Until one day they really weren't. And it was, God, even talking about it now, it feels like a distant thing that almost didn't happen, where my father abandoned our family pretty abruptly. It wasn't like, hey, I think I'm leaving and we're getting divorced. It was, we drove up to the house and everything was gone. Like that kind of rip off the Band-Aid kind of abandonment. And that put my mom, and my brother is about 10 years younger than me. So at the time he was about 6, I was 16. My mom was 38, right? Wow. So these very young people. And I speak about it now with a lot of grace and compassion. There's really no anger or bitterness. And I want to honor that there can be, and I want to honor that there has been for me. But when I talk about it now, to talk about it authentically and from where I am in this place in my story, yes, a lot of hurt and pain and growth and big fat potholes that I landed in. But when you put the time into transforming with an invitation and allow grace to come, I think this is the first time on a podcast I've talked about it where I haven't been like, and then this happened and then that happened, right? Because even though it's been probably a decade since I feel like I've healed, the tent pole in the tent that was a part of that story was so aligned with how I've always told it that I was still telling it that way, even though that wasn't how I was feeling, right? So when you ask the question about my childhood, it's quite a normal place until around 16 years old, when there was a huge vacant hole. And it wasn't just that he left, it was that he really, truly didn't want anything to do with us. We couldn't find him. There was no financial support. My mom hadn't worked in 17 years. We were at the bottom. We were in the food line, right? We were getting big chunks of Velveeta cheese, and figuring out how to survive. And one of the things that we figured out was that you could get dented cans in garbage dumpsters behind grocery stores that were perfectly fine consumable food, right? Because it's in a can, and just because it doesn't have a label and it has a dent, most likely, those things don't go off, right? You can put a can of food in a bomb shelter and probably eat it at any time. So that was really like the first detour in my life that I remember, really probably the most pivotal thing that's happened to me in my life, to require me to make a set of choices and how do I want to show up in the world. And for a long time, that was victimization. I always joke, people will say, hey, Colleen, do you want to go for breakfast or you want to go for lunch? And I would go, I'm abandoned. I was abandoned. Let's go to lunch, right? It was like that. It was that much of an identity of mine that's how I showed up in the world. And that's really what childhood looked like. And then I grew up pretty quick because, I had a younger brother, and my mom and I were a team, and we had to figure a lot of things out.
When did you go from that mentality of being fully in that victimhood to really reclaiming your sovereignty and saying, okay, this happened, and what do I do about it? How do I grow from it? How do I heal from it? When did that transition take place? Truthfully,
12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, truthfully, right? So I'm 53 years old. I was 16, as I just said. And it was such a core identity of mine. It happened to me. And therefore, that dent in my armor would always be. And it wasn't that my mom wasn't great. It wasn't that the people around me, my aunt, uncle, my grandparents, weren't good, loving, caring people. But a lot of it, what you didn't talk about, right? And a lot of it was, well, you know what happened, so suck it up, buttercup, right? And I think I was just about 40, or maybe just over 40. I can never quite get it right. And I literally fell on the kitchen floor. I literally was on the floor, and I'm looking at my husband. I'm like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I had also given up a career, as a consultant for a long time.
We're going to get into that.
And so it was like, I don't even know who I am. And those little whispers that you have that you don't pay attention to often got so loud, they grabbed me by the throat and threw me on the floor, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. Thankfully, I have an amazing, loving husband who was like, okay, what do we have to do? Right? What has to happen next? And the next piece of that journey began really at the Chopra Center with learning how to meditate and be mindful and that there's another way and I don't have to be a victim. And that pivot started. But I will also say that it wasn't until I wrote the first book that I actually forgave my father, which was 5 years ago. Wow. So 12 years ago, I began that journey of reclaiming. And I would say 5, 6 years ago, I actually embodied it, where I was like, I'm not that anymore. I'm not that.
It's such a journey to transformation. I think sometimes we think it might be a quick thing, but that was a long time. There was a long chunk of time where you had to go through the different experiences that you were meant to go through. And then I love that you had a midlife awakening, as I like to call it. Most people call it crises, but I think it's when everything catches up to you and all of the conditioning, the experiences, everything that we've gone through in life, there comes a reckoning and you have to say, I need to address these things because these subconscious belief systems and these behaviors that I've developed over the years as a result of the things I've experienced, they're driving me forward. They're ruling my life, not me. I'm not running my life. And I think there comes a point where most of us, midlife say, okay, I need to stop. And a lot of us end up on the floor too. Just saying, what's happening? Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious about that because as someone that's in the space of life coaching and working with others and helping them co-create the transformation that they want, I'm curious the percentage of how many people really do this. We say like, oh, in your 50s or in your 40s, you come into a set of awareness or whatever. I'm not sure how many hear that and then make the shift. And I don't know why that is. It's society, it's fear, it's imposter syndrome, it's scarcity model, whatever all of the pieces are. And I think it's really part of that soul journey. Like, why are you here? Are you meant to fall on the floor and have some sort of transformation and move into something? Or are you here as a representation of something else? Right? So people that choose to maybe, I hate to say, like put some scale on something, but people that decide to stay in a place of stuck or victimization, I don't necessarily think that's because they're bad or they don't know how. I think that's the purpose of them being here. That's the learning, and it's so important that we cultivate that awareness about one another, that someone that's done the work or hasn't done the work is better or worse. Rather, there's a purpose for where everyone is at this point. Lots of times I look at people where I'm like, oh, in my mind, I'm judging and I'm saying, oh, I don't know if they've really done the work. And I'll catch myself and I'll say, but they're teaching me something. They're showing me something, right? They're inspiring me to propel forward because I've been in the stuck. So I'm always curious, about who arrives where and when and why. And I'll never know the answer, but I think it creates compassion. And so I really invite people to think about, if you're not ready, it's okay. You're not ready,
I really love that perspective. I think it's such a unique one. And it's a great point because I think about it all the time too. Like sometimes, I'll get in the victim mentality too. And I'm like, why is my journey so hard? And so-and-so's journey is so different, but everybody's here for a different reason. And I don't know why they're here, but I'm getting closer to myself and I'm understanding more and more why I'm here and the lessons that I'm here to learn. And so it's trying to focus on myself and kind of stay in my own lane, not project my own stuff onto other people. But it's tricky sometimes because I feel like, especially those of us who are really into self-development and self-work, it's easy to look around us and say, oh, they haven't done the work and pass that judgment like you were saying. And I think that's such a beautiful point. We don't know why people are here or what their journeys are. So I think it's good to catch ourselves and not pass judgment, but just approach others with grace and compassion.
Yeah. It's like not our business.
It's not our business. No.
Oh, that's so, right? It's like, oh, it's not my business, but I'm a human and I'd like it to be.
Well, I think it's our nature to compare because for me, that's always, I'm inherently a very type A, overachieving type of person. And I always like to have a benchmark. So I look at those around me. Am I doing well? Am I below? Am I above? But the older I get now, I'm realizing that's just not the way life works. Everybody's timelines are different. Everybody's paths are different. And what success might be for me might be so completely different for you. And that's okay. The trick is what we're talking about in this episode is coming home to yourself so that you can find what that true path is and align with that. And that's where you're going to really experience the life that you're meant to live here.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful summary of it. And when we can embrace that others are showing up in the way that they are as either a reflection or an opportunity for ourselves, and we use it as information versus judgment, then we elevate, right? Not because we elevate above someone else, just we elevate, right? We become a little bit more aware. And so I think, yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I'm in constant practice. I think sometimes even you come onto a podcast or something like this, the words that you say come out to be heard back again by yourself. It's some form of validation. And so hopefully someone else hears a piece of your story, my story, or one of your other amazing guests and resonates and finds inspiration or something that inspires them or moves them. But really, are we not just here for the reflection of ourselves to find that our own individual growth? So
no, it's true. And I feel like as I've only launched this podcast a few months ago, but I feel like I've been learning and healing alongside everybody else. Like all my guests are teaching me and reflecting things back to me as well. So I absolutely love that point. So going back to the things you went through in childhood, you have this really traumatic experience of your father just abandoning you guys. And then you wrote about it in your book about, the dumpster diving that you just mentioned. And, that stuck out to me so much. I'm curious what type of belief systems or patterns you think resulted from having those experiences in such formative years.
I think I became a not very nice person. I don't think on the external side, like if you asked my high school friends or people I went to college with, I don't think they would say, oh, she wasn't nice. But I was so insecure that I was in constant competition or I was in constant hiding. I would lie, straight up lie to hide something that I thought, well, if I say this about myself, it will make me look like I fit in. So there was this constant behavior to be seen. And underlying that desire to be seen was a really deep river of fear of being found out. It's funny, when I wrote the book, there's a friend of mine in high school who I keep in touch with now. He's a teacher. I've been in his virtual classroom teaching meditation and just a really great guy. He read the book. He had no idea that had happened. I was so hidden. And probably my mom and we all were like intentionally hiding what was really happening to us. And in that hiding, you have to lie. You have to create like another avatar of yourself. And so I kind of became Colleen who looked like this, but the real Colleen was kind of under here. And to keep that facade is challenging. I think it also created someone that's an A-type, chase the big career, which also came from fear of not having, and oh my gosh, everything can be taken away, literally everything. And worked myself into a place where I didn't listen to my own needs and I would just push. So there was a lot of abandoning of myself. And so in the third book, what I write is my father abandoned me once and I abandoned myself for 3 decades. And that's exactly what happened. I got hit by a car. And then for the rest of my life, or at least 30 more years, I talked about the whiplash I had from that car accident. And so, yeah, dishonesty, fear, shame, really just self-deprecating. I had eating disorders. I was bulimic. I was anorexic. I was promiscuous. I was trying to be somebody I wasn't, right? There was all kinds of things that were going on. And I think it's the accumulation of all of that that had me fall on the floor. Like you just can't survive in that shell for long, right?
You can't. No, it absolutely catches up with you in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think your soul, I love in the beginning, you were talking about like the whispers. I think all along your soul was probably whispering to you that there's another path and there's another way, but it's hard to hear it when you're just moving at such a fast pace or throwing yourself into work or whatever it is. It's like you can tune it out. And I feel like I did the same for years. And then sometimes it takes falling on your face to finally find the floor and that stillness to actually hear, okay, I need to take another path. I need to go in another direction. But I resonate a lot with what we were just saying. For me in my life, like perfectionism and control, that's how that manifested for me. And I just felt like if I could get straight A's and if I could get the Fortune 500 job, like I'm going to be fine. I can control everything when really nothing's in our control. And it's just letting go of that. But it was a hard lesson for me to learn. And I'm still always unlearning it. The perfectionism is a constant for me. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think for me too, that scarcity mindset, like if you summarized all the things up, right, the actions that I was taking was really coming from a scarcity mindset associated with abandonment, right? And there aren't many weeks or months go by where I'm not like, oh, there's that, there's that scarcity mindset thing sneaking in. And I'm now somewhat appreciative of it, right? Where it's like this reminder, like, hey, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Like, it's not that the universe is trying to put me back into a scarcity mindset. I actually view it now as, thanks for checking in with me. I am strong, right? I am about abundance. So it's a reminder when it sneaks in again and you want to kind of go, oh gosh, I don't know, am I really doing all the right things? Again, you have that opportunity to choose. Like, has it come to hit you in the face to put you back in a victim mindset, or has it come to hit you in the face to go, I am a phoenix and I already rose from that. So thank you for the reminder. I'm going to move forward. And so it always kind of levels you. I think potholes give you opportunity to level up. Right? Let me test if really what's inside of me has been settled and healed enough so that when the universe bumps me, I can go, yeah, I'm all right. I'm still good. Right? I got this. Yeah.
I absolutely love this perspective. I'm smiling to myself because I just think it's so refreshing and such a badass perspective. Like, okay, yeah, I'm doing a good job. Like, I see you. Because I always have a tendency, I did it recently in therapy, to beat myself up, where like something happened recently and I felt like, oh man, I should be better than this. I've learned this lesson before. Why am I back here? I've put in all this self work. I'm so self aware. How did I do this again? And man, how much grace you extend yourself when you have that kind of perspective. So I'm going to steal that. I'm going to adopt that shift.
Steal it. I say,
Subtle
is it a
shift.
lesson or it's a subtle shift? Is it a lesson or is it a reminder?
I love that.
Is it a lesson or is it a reminder? And if it's a lesson, super cool. I have something to learn and grow into. If it's a reminder, super cool. I have another choice to revisit. Maybe I like to think of it as sandpaper. You use really coarse sandpaper when you're at the beginning of a project. And as you get the wood softer or more polished, I guess you would say, you use a finer grit. And so it's like you're just kind of little edges, little touch up, little sandpaper to another little brush up, because there's no mastery. There's no end goal. There's just this opportunity to get to practice and try again and hopefully mess up and not be too big of a deal and, give it another go. So yeah, it's all yours.
No, I love the sandpaper analogy. And it's true. I have to remind myself too that the growth journey, the healing journey, it's a never ending journey, which is also exhausting. Some days I'm like, when is this over? But yeah, there is no mastery. I love that. There is no finish line. It's just giving ourselves grace and enjoying the ride too. I feel like sometimes we can get so lost in like doing the work that we forget to just enjoy where we are at this moment.
That's so beautiful, because a lot of times when people hear me say subtle shifts, they think I'm talking about like something I have to put on my to-do list to like get better. And I think one of the things people should put on their to-do list is a moment to pause and celebrate that you chose the salad over the burger, if that's one of your goals, or that you celebrate that you went for a 5-minute walk when you should have done 45, or you wanted to do 45, but you only had 5. But instead of forfeiting the 5, you actually went. So a subtle shift would be to celebrate that, all right, well, I took 5. I didn't give myself 45, but I did something, right? So again, it's just the perspective is, I think it's everything. And I think you really have to invite that transformation of perspective in with grace and opportunity versus, force or judgment or shame or any of that other stuff that we don't need any of that.
It's true. We spend so much time in our heads. It's so important, the self-talk that happens there. So I love that reminder. So your journey, you go through a difficult childhood, then you jump into a pretty traditional path, a pretty like default path with the corporate world. What did that look like for you and how did that feel for you? Did it feel aligned at that time?
At the time, it felt aligned because I was seen, right? So I graduated from high school in 1990 and I stepped into a Big 5 consulting firm, which was, and I don't mean this as any derogatory thing towards gender, but it was a man's world, right? And I stepped into that and was pretty successful. And that felt good. because I was seen, and then I was rewarded, and then I was seen, and then I was rewarded, right? And I had all these opportunities, and then I was able to move to London, where I was supposed to be for a year, but I was there for nearly 7. And again, like, wow, I'm running a consulting business in Europe. At some point, and I really think it was around that London time when I moved abroad, oh my gosh, what if they find me out again? Well, settled in.
It's like imposter syndrome.
And that was a very familiar feeling to the feelings of forfeiting and abandoning myself, right? Like, oh, what if they find out? What if my high school friends find out that these things are happening? So the traditional path felt really, really great, and yet a lot of familiarity to it. And so I doubled down and I worked harder and I could do more. And I would get up at 5 a.m. and I would work out. I would go have something to eat. I'd be in the office, first person in the office. I'd come home around 5:30 because everyone in England would go have a drink at the bar, the pub, or the whatever. I'd have something to eat, and around 7 o'clock, I'd go back to work and go to bed around 1. And then I was back up. And I did this for years, right? But I was racing to keep ahead of something that wasn't real, And it was almost like I didn't trust the people around me that they would actually see the real me, which I think was my biggest loss. These people that were putting me in the positions that they were putting me in, they knew what I was delivering or not delivering, right? And so the fact that I didn't even have trust in that retrospectively feels kind of unfortunate. Like I missed an opportunity there. So I'm very grateful to have a relationship with my boss while I was in London, still to this day, who's an amazing human being. Thank you, Gordon, to kind of give me some reflection on that, right? Because I'm still kind of working through that.
Yeah.
20 years later.
Okay, so Colleen, you are now an integrative life coach and a mindfulness mentor, very different from the corporate life that you used to live. So I'm curious how that transition happened, and when did you start feeling the pull to do something else and pursue something that was maybe more aligned for you?
Yeah, I think, some of it happened naturally. I got married. I met my husband while I was in England. I got married. Something I thought I would never wanted or was going to do was have a baby. Best decision I ever made. But the day we got married, I said, remember, I said no babies. Anyway, that's another podcast. But by choice, we have this amazing son. But the transition somewhat happened because of that. We realized we both couldn't kind of do what we were doing. We were both in that corporate world, or at least we were choosing not to do that. We had done the nanny thing and stuff. And then I fell on the kitchen floor because I kind of lost my identity of like, now who am I? I didn't know who I was in high school. I didn't know who I was, right? I worked hard, filled with shame and imposter syndrome through most of my corporate career. Now here I am on the floor. And when I went off to a couple of retreats, I first went to one in Texas, which was not for me, but another podcast. But I went off to the Chopra Center to learn how to meditate. And when I was there, I really went for myself. And I went for the certification because I thought then I can get the A-type in me was like, then I'll get the best data. Then I'll get the most information. Then I'll be the best meditator, as if that's a thing, right? The form of meditation that I used and the practice of meditation was transformative for me. I heard my inner voice. I saw all the things in front of me that were not meant for me. They were meant for me to allow me to project forward, right? So why they weren't meant for me and how I could move forward from them. And I thought, if this works for me, I have to tell everybody about it. And I literally started to teach meditation. And that was about a decade ago, 13 years ago. And it just started to unfold. And I got curious, learning more, and it felt good. And all of a sudden, I was following a path of things that felt good and not things that I felt like I was running from. I mean, I talk about 16 and my abandonment as like potentially the greatest detour. I actually think the grandest detour was this one. When I realized that I could follow a path of non-victimization, that I could follow a path of joy. And that was the divinity in all of this. It was like the joke. I was like, that's how I came into this world. And why have I spent 40 years on the other path, right? So I really went in with my own curiosity to heal myself, to feel better. It was that, therapy, a whole bunch of stuff. And what I came out with was, if this works for me, how do I not give this gift to anyone else that wants to listen? And that was the great unfolding, if you will. So it was followed by Ayurveda, it was followed by yoga, it was followed by list the things. And then I just knew I needed a framework. I managed a lot of people. I coached a lot of people in the corporate world. But I feel like I was coaching them to push and succeed in a way that was out of alignment. So now the majority of people that I coach are senior level executives who have gotten someplace in the world that's like the top of their game. And they're like, what am I doing here? Right? How did I get here? And so the journey, I feel like I was led there. I feel like I was kind of handed in my, my first 40 years of life, a certain path that was intended to be a little painful. And if I was willing to make the pivot to look outside the pothole, I always call it potholes. I don't know why I always feel like you're in one, kind of looking up. But if I made the decision to fill that pothole in and to walk across it instead of walking around it, that truly was where I belong. So for me, the transition came out of my own traumas, my own tribulations, my own wounds, my own need to pivot. And a lot of it was driven by the fact that I have the best husband and the best son. And I kept looking at that and going, I know what it feels like for that to be pulled apart, and I'm not doing that. So a lot of credit to the divine alignment of that, right? And for my husband staying around when I was a mess on the floor, and for my son being young enough to, it not really matter that much. But yeah, that was my pivot.
No, but you listen to the call, and I think sometimes that's how it starts. It's like one little seed is planted or one little intuitive nudge, as I like to call it. And for you, it was meditation. Like, oh, I really want to go learn more about this and I want to meditate. And then from that, it took you to the next step and the next step, and it led you to where you are today. And I think it's those small steps that really make a huge difference. And following the joy, I love that you said that you didn't need to have this life of like drudgery or this mundane default path. You went to where your heart was calling you. And I think it's so important to remember that life is what we make it. It doesn't need to be this path that we have learned growing up or that we have in our head. I think listen to your heart and like listen to what's pulling you. And you and I had a conversation about this recently where we were talking. And then, as you know, I'm going through a little bit of a life, not a little bit, I'm going through a big life transition right now, which I will share more about soon, guys. But I was saying to you, I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And you were like, you want to do this. Don't confuse the universe. Like, this is what you know. And I think it's like accepting your truth inside and following that. So I think that's so important. And it's great, so great that you did that.
There's a vulnerability in being yourself because it doesn't fit in with the external noise. And one of the greatest subtle shifts that happened for me in meditation, call it mindfulness, call it awareness, call it conversations with God. The word meditation gets kind of mangled, or I can never meditate. Okay, fine. Can you be mindful? Can you be aware? And the greatest subtle shift that came out of that was a question that says, who am I? It's the first question. So if you're practicing primordial sound meditation, the first question you ask yourself as you settle in is, who am I? And if you can be really honest with that question, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Do people really choose to stay stuck or do they move? That if you're willing to answer the question, who am I? Number one, pat yourself on the back. You're super brave. Because oftentimes who I am and the answer to that doesn't fit the mold you've created or chosen or allowed to be pulled into, right? So if you're going to make one subtle shift today or after this podcast, I invite you to ask yourself, who am I? And be honest. And if you don't know how to do it by yourself, call somebody, sit under a tree and ask nature, just who am I? And then can you be brave enough to actually follow that calling, or at least stick a toe and try it out? Yeah.
That's great, because when I first got divorced, that was the question I asked myself.
I knew I loved you.
Who am I? And I'll be honest, I didn't know the answer. And that set me off on my healing journey. So if you are listening and you're asking yourself that question and you don't know the answer right away, it's okay. It's okay. I think it's the first step in figuring out who you are, is asking the question and maybe just admitting to yourself the truth that, okay, at this very moment, maybe I don't know, but deep down you really do. I think it's uncovering it, and it just takes a little time to get there. It's always there. I think the answers are always within us,
and that's the choice of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Keep asking questions. Who am I? I don't know. Do I really not know? Well, I don't know. Let me think about, okay, when I was 5, I knew. Right? Let yourself unravel. Because the truth is, you're so raveled up that you can't see, between the nesting of this doesn't sound very eloquent, but like the spaghetti ball, right? The whole raveling, like let it unravel, like pull each strand out and investigate it and look at it. Well, what's that? Who is that of me? So there's a curiosity that lies under the question, who am I, for sure.
Exactly. Approaching it with curiosity versus judgment, I think, is everything. So, Colleen, let's talk about the book, Sacred Spaces, Subtle Shifts for Mind, Body, and Home Transformation. You have 3 volumes now. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What inspired you to write this series?
I think everybody's stories deserves to be told. And never thought in a million years it was going to be a series. I wrote it because I wanted to tell my own story. I felt like I needed to be heard with a voice that was a healed voice versus the wounded voice. You know, my pivot of like, no more. I'm not that victim anymore. And I was going to write a solo book. And as I talked to people about it, people were like, oh, wow, wow. And I was like, wait a minute, this as a collective is a bigger, more powerful thing. And so that's what we did. We undertook, and 22 or 3, I forget how many are in the first book, brave souls followed me. And the ripple collectively is more powerful. And people always say, well, when are you going to stop writing these collective books? And I'm like, well, there's 8 billion people in the world, and everybody's story deserves to be heard. So until people are not willing to stand naked on the edge of the world with me anymore and tell their story, then I'll keep doing this. For me, it's an extension of coaching, right? It's an opportunity to work with people and help pull their stories out, help them understand the who am I. A lot of people who write don't. Jake's one of them. I asked him to be part of it. He's like, I don't even know if I have a story. I'm like, Jake. Yes, you do. Right? We all have lots of stories, and it doesn't have to be grand. It can be an interaction with a grocery store clerk that makes you feel a certain way or changes you or opens your opinion or curiosity to something. So the inspiration came from my own discomforts and desire to reframe that. And now it's one of the greatest gifts that I have, is to work with other people who are looking for some support or a guide to walk by their side and help them have their own healing journey through the writing of their chapter. Yeah.
I love when people take the hard things that they've been through and then produce something beautiful from it that can help other people in the process. And this book is exactly that. And I love that you bring other people along for the ride. It reminds me of podcasting a little bit. You're giving others a platform to tell their stories. And I think stories are so important. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. It's how we help each other out through this crazy journey we call life here. So I love it too, because each chapter is by a different person and they're short. It's very snackable. You can finish it in like a few minutes. And then it has, every author has a little practice that you can take and adopt to make your own subtle shift in your life. And some may resonate with you, some may not, but there's so many different nuggets of wisdom throughout the book and this series. I think it's just absolutely a wonderful concept. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, thank you for picking it up and enjoying it. And it's not possible without the person sharing the story and the person wanting to hear it. So there's this, beautiful parallel in giving and receiving of being heard and being listened to. And I think one of the greatest gifts that the writers receive, at least this is what they tell me, is someone's hearing my story, right? The story I want to tell, the way I want to tell it. And I think from a reader's perspective, there's such a vulnerability in the gift that someone's being honest. Because if you're even at, conversations that you have on the street, everyone's always kind of a little bit like telling the part of the story that they want to share. I did that for a really, really, really long time. I told the part of the story that made me look like I fit in. And I think that's a lot of how we operate. So there's a lot of bold, brave telling of the story and receiving of the stories that happen in here. So yeah, I'm very grateful to all the Sacred Spaces authors and anyone that allows me to share about them. It's a team effort for sure.
For you, what exactly does sacred space mean?
Yeah, it's the space in between, right? It's the silence. It's the infinite possibility. It's the place that we choose to view as the divine, the all-knowing wisdom, which is the inner voice. Ultimately, it's the inner voice. And if we don't have a space in between a thought, or if we don't have a space in between anything that we're doing, it's really just a jumbled mess, right? So space is so important. And I think it's one of the things we look at the least. And maybe that's what makes it so sacred, that actually if you are someone that's kind of dipping in and looking at that, wow, it's so special. But we all have the opportunity to do it, whether it's how we change the pace of our voice, whether it's we just actually literally stop, if it's we choose to listen without the need to respond. So sacred space to me is the silence, because that's where all the wisdom is. And I think that's why meditation for me was such a pivotal changing point. The answer to who am I isn't something you think through. The answer to who am I is when you get still and sit in the sacred. It's given to you. It's already there. So that's how I've come to define sacred space over the last 5 years, that it's really the stillness and the silence.
It's such an important lesson. It's one I've been actively learning this past year. And again, when we were talking that time and I was telling you about what's going on in my life and what I'm looking for, and you said to me, I think you're looking for spaciousness. And I was. I've been so busy and focused on producing and getting things done, but it's hard to know what the next step is when you don't have the time and the space to really hear what you want. So I'm actively working on sitting in that stillness. And it's hard when you're not used to being still. It is uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels as though I'm being lazy, but I'm trying to just get quiet and tap into my own inner knowing and inner wisdom. And we all have it. So I encourage anybody who's listening to do the same and to pick up the book as well, volume 1, 2, and 3. Colleen, where can people find out more about you and the books and your coaching and all the great things that you do?
Well, I'm really excited to say that Barnes & Noble has picked up the book.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's amazing.
I know.
That's amazing.
So I'm super excited. So you can find book 1 and 3. They didn't pick up book 2, but you can pick up book 1 and 3 at Barnes & Noble. You can get all 3 of them on Amazon. If you want a little extra piece of love, you can go to ColleenAvisCoaching.com and buy the book from me directly, and I'll send a little piece of love along with the book. But ColleenAvisCoaching.com is where you can find me. Also on my Instagram handle, which is Colleen_Avis_coaching. You can read the first chapter to all the books. My first chapter for free is there. And you can connect with me in a number of ways there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just one final question for you. Is there one small, subtle shift that you go back to time and time again to help ground you or realign you when you're in a busy time in your life?
It's a pause.
The pause.
It's a pause. There's a tool called STOP, which is STOP, stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. That is really my greatest gift. And it's really because it's the space to determine how to move forward with something. So I like to move really fast. And I recognize sometimes I say yes to things I wish I had said no or no. But when I pause or I'm feeling fluttery, I'm often out in the ether, floating around. I'm very ungrounded a lot of the time. I'm standing. You can probably tell I'm moving and standing, trying to help the energy move as I speak to you. And it only takes 2 or 3 seconds to stop, take a breath in, take a breath out, and let yourself be heard. And I don't know one thing, unless you're responding to like you're a paramedic or an emergency room doctor. I don't think there's one thing that doesn't make better. To give yourself a beat, to honor yourself, to see the sacredness in yourself. And that's what that subtle shift is all about. And it's free.
Yeah, absolutely great advice to stop, take a breath, observe. Absolutely wonderful. Colleen, thank you so much. I loved this conversation. You were just such a beautiful soul. I admire you so much. I appreciate your vulnerability so much. And, I think this whole conversation is just a reminder that, coming home to yourself, it doesn't need to be this huge life overhaul. It can be, and it is at times, but it also is just a willingness to stop, get still, to listen, to trust, and just to take one small step, and that can be the process to get you there. So thank you so much for reminding us of that today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. And I see that reflection of your beautiful soul too. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Great Detour. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love if you could leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does help the show have a greater impact. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have your own detour story? You can share it with me by visiting thegreatdetour.com or The Great Detour on Instagram. Thanks for taking this journey with me.